Hey there and welcome back to another DreamWorks video. And today I want to return to a franchise that I haven't made a video on in quite a while. One of DreamWorks' best and yet still extremely underrated and underutilized franchises. And that franchise is of course Rise of the Guardians, whose film adaptation tells the story of Jack Frost, a teenager who, back in the olden days of colonial America, drowns in a frozen lake and rises again as a spirit of cold and winter through the power of the Man in the Moon, and thus becomes Jack Frost. For a long time, and I mean centuries, the dude has no idea what he's supposed to do with his life. The process of being resurrected as an immortal spirit stripped him of his memories. And since the moon is, well, honestly he's a bit of a jerk, he never speaks to him or contacts him at all, leaving him to his own devices, unable to be seen by the majority of the world, with no memories or any idea of what his purpose in his new life is supposed to be. And that's that. The dude lived like that for a miserable couple hundred of years, unleashing snow days and blizzards upon the world, bringing joy and fun, but never really achieving the same feats as the rest of the Guardians. He's never acknowledged by the children of the world as being real, or as worth believing in, and so he remains unseen, until we arrive at the events of the movie Rise of the Guardians, because, that's the canon we'll be working with today. Yeah, the books are good and all, but let's be honest, not everybody's read them. But I guarantee that people who actually care about the topic of this video have seen the film before. So, anyway, Jack Frost lives his lonely life and rarely interacts with any of the Earth's other guardian spirits, until the return of Pitch Black, aka the Boogeyman. And yeah, it's probably for the best they simply called him Pitch Black in the film. I'm not sure anybody could actually take a villain called the Boogeyman seriously.
Well, I know it's absurd, but I dreamed the Boogeyman was after me, and he's
Boogeyman! You nailed the window shut! I'll get the gun!
Regardless, Pitch Black, aka the Boogeyman, returns and starts laying waste to believers all across the world, threatening the power of the Guardians and ushering in a new era of fear and darkness. And after all this time, the Moon finally decides to give Jack a purpose, and names him the Earth's brand new Guardian. After collecting a bunch of teeth when Pitch kidnaps the Tooth Fairies, and then accidentally abandoning the others to go off to regain his memories and thus not being there to fight to save Easter, a dejected Jack goes to the home of the last believer, a little kid called Jamie Bennett, and somehow, through the magic of plot, this kid convinces himself that Jack Frost is real, and is sending him messages and frost on his window, even though he's summoning Easter eggs and a little ice bunny. Hopefully, the kid did not pull a muscle with that stretch, but yeah. The kid believes, the Guardians unite to protect him, and Pitch gets sucked into non-existence by the nightmares, never to be seen again. The end. So yeah, that's the general gist of the plot. And whilst this intro might have been a bit long-winded, I feel like the backstory was a bit necessary to address the next part of the video, the actual topic. Because recently I got to thinking, is Jamie, the last believer, a descendant of Jack Frost, or rather a descendant of Jack Frost's sister? Is that something that could be true? And happily, I found that there were others that do share this point of view, but that the evidence for the theory seems to be quite lacking. And whilst the director himself said it's certainly a possibility, he also made it quite clear that they didn't have much time to flesh this out in any part of the story. So it wasn't really their intention. So pretty much we got to build this theory from the ground up. And so, yeah, that's fine by me. Guess nothing else for it but to jump right into things and see what we could puzzle out. So the biggest piece of evidence that I see for this theory being true is kind of weak, or at least it's very surface level. And yeah, this evidence is that Jamie and Jack's sister look vaguely similar. And yeah, I guess they have brown hair, kind of similar faces, and honestly, they do look similar. And so does Jack in his human form, and you can see the links with little Sophie, but I'm not sure it's quite enough. After all, animation had come a long way by that point in time, but even in 2012, there were certainly a number of instances where characters would look samey. So I'm not going to hold on to this as my golden goose Hail Mary throw here. You need a bit more. So slap on your tinfoil hat and let's keep going. Because, I agree with the brown hair thing and the similar faces, but the evidence is a bit weak. However, there is more. The mums do share a voice actress, which, well, I guess you could argue that this is also weak, and that since both characters have relatively few lines, it makes sense to double them up. But yeah, when you combine it with the similar appearances, and then the fact that Jack's family in the 1600s and Jamie's family in the modern day share the same family dynamic, a seemingly single mum, or at least only the mum is shown on screen, with two children, an older son and a younger daughter.
Coincidence? I think not!
And I'll be real with you, that there is the last of the hard, visible evidence. And yeah, even if it is weak, much like Jamie, I'm a believer. So I'm going to keep pushing on and drawing conclusions from scattered and very vague evidence. And hey, look, I did warn you. This shit is a tinfoil hat video. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is Jack's connection to both the town of Burgess and the Bennett family. Okay, so Jack dies and is brought back sometime during the 1600s, I believe, in the town of Burgess. And then he has a couple of 100 years to stew on his life. And yeah, we see that he does travel around. However, he always comes back home to Burgess. He returns to what he perceives to be his house, his home. Wind, take me home. He says that right at the start of the film after making mischief in what I think was Moscow. But why? Apart from waking up there, what is it that holds him in place in this random Pennsylvanian town? Why not head to a population center where there's more chances to bring about fun and mischief? And my answer? Well, I kind of think that part of Jack, even with his memories lost, still knows that deep down this place is special to him, that he needs to be here, that this is his place. And for me, the most logical reason for that is that deep down he knows that this is where his family's from. His sister and his mother lived here, and their descendants likely still do. As after all, the town has grown, so it's not like a small town that's died off. And for a long time, people have always lived where their parents lived, and their parents, and so on and so on. And so if Jack's family lived in this town in the early colonial days, it's not really much of a stretch to suggest that perhaps they're still there. Or at least some of them are. And as to why it would be Jamie's family, well, in the film, does Jack not reference all the times he's made Jamie's day fun? All the times he's brought about snow days and played with Jamie and his friends, even though they couldn't see him? To me, this implies that he does spend a fair bit of time with this kid in particular. But why? Why follow him around bringing him fun exclusively? Or at least more than others? Well, one, because that's his center, fun. But two, because he's descended from the first recipient of Jack's special brand of fun. When he was human, he always was playing jokes and having fun with who? His sister. And after he died, I think this would have still been the case. His center is fun. He was dropped in the middle of this random town, and after he came to terms with what he was, there would have been this sad little girl who'd lost her brother, and he would have noticed that. She'd lost the brother who'd play with her, and take care of her, and be fun. And so, I think it makes a lot of sense that Jack Frost was drawn to her, even though he didn't have his memories. And since we know that he sticks around in the town, is it such a stretch to think that maybe he would want to play that role for her descendants too? I don't think so. After all, despite apparently nobody at all thinking he exists, it's Jamie that believes first, and it's his mum that first brings up Jack Frost. She references his name despite apparently nobody having ever believed he was legit. So how do they know about him then? Feels like it might be a family legend or something like that, and thus the stories were passed down through the family. And honestly, thematically, I think this is quite a beautiful, bittersweet thought to have. To think that the last human to see Jack as he was, as a human, was his little sister, and then he drowned, and the first human to see him as Jack Frost the Guardian is Jamie, her descendant, and a character who plays a similar role in Jack's life that his sister did. And on top of that, you can draw more parallels, because he saves the day. Jack saves the day by telling Jamie the very thing he told his sister hundreds of years before. And so whilst they might not actually be connected, to me, it makes sense because it wraps his arc in a sweet little bow and makes everything feel all warm and fuzzy and sentimental, which is like one of the big things that the film tries to do. So I think it fits perfectly. And thus, I don't care what anyone says, you'll never convince me that Jamie isn't Jack Frost's great nephew. It just feels too perfect. And so yeah, that's that. I honestly can't think of much more evidence, and so I guess I'll have to call it here. So yeah, Jamie is Jack Frost's sister's descendant. You won't convince me otherwise, but of course, as always, these have just been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think of this? Do you agree? Do you think there's a special connection here? Do you have any evidence to share? Maybe something I've missed from the video, or do you disagree completely? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.